What up, dudes? How's it going?
What is up, my man?
Go
Just
Air
want to
Force.
say, go Navy, beat Air Force. Just throw that out there.
Just got to get that out of the
Cheers.
way.
Cheers
Right.
with my Navy mug and my Navy sweatshirt. I have a pair of Navy skivvies on too, in case you guys are wondering.
You should have put a Navy hat on to block some of that like
The
shining
glare.
light, the glare
We
coming
both
off of your forehead.
we both got it.
Stu's a Harrist. I've come to, I don't know if that's a thing, but he's a Harrist.
I feel it.
And I
I feel
feel,
the
I
tension.
feel, I feel discriminated against by Stu. My
Yeah,
victim's coming out strong.
this
I
is
can't grow
new.
facial hair
This is new for
or
me.
hair.
You
Yeah.
or hair. You got some hair on your back. I know you got some hair on
I
your
mean,
back.
I get I can do the back hair. Anything under the neckline, man,
You're
I'm
good.
strong. I'm strong to real strong. But anything above the neckline, man, it just doesn't do it. Doesn't do it.
Well, that's not what we came to talk about today, but it's a good start. It's a
That
good
wasn't the
start. It's a good.
topic. That wasn't the
Great,
topic today.
great start.
We were going to talk about body hair and lack of head
Yeah.
hair. That, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm on the wrong podcast.
Uh,
Oh.
Nate, welcome, welcome to the Kinetic Man podcast. We're glad to have you. We're going to talk about body hair today. Where would
Let's
you
do
like to
it.
start?
Facial hair. Facial hair is
Facial.
good. You got some new growth going.
Yeah. This is
I'm
a
sure
new
David
thing.
can grow it
I got
here.
some gray. I've got some gray going here, which is a new discovery for me. I didn't know that there was gray here. So, I'm getting to that age.
It happens to all of us. I got it here too, man. It's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's the benefit of not having hair here. I have no idea if it's going gray or not. It's a mystery. It's a
Keeps you
mystery for me.
young.
So keeps me young, man. Keeps me young.
Uh,
Hey, I'm excited about this chat, Nate, for a couple reasons. One thing I did a post on this yesterday. I was just reading something, and then a news. Or I'm sorry, an ad popped up, and it was highlighting the idea of um, aging well and getting healthy and enjoying all the benefits of aging and fitness. And then like the last line said no exercise required, and it just like struck me so strange that we're always looking to we always want the benefits without putting in any work. And it made me think about me as a dad and some of the challenges, even when my kid came home yesterday and he's like, Dad, are we gonna do we've been doing these Orby gun battles like left and right. They've been super awesome, but it's freezing outside here in Colorado, and it was freezing yesterday, and those things were stinging, dude. But that I went back to that article, and it really was like, man, you have to be so intentional, but at the same time, that may look like a lot of different things. And for you, you've got CEO Amplifier going right now. You were heavily involved with the Bunker Labs, and you taught some high school kids. You were teaching them religion, faith. I don't remember the exact subject,
Mhm.
but Jesus. You were teaching them Jesus is what I pulled from that, and you wrote a devotional planner. Like what I love about it, and where this all kind of comes together for me is the fact that the path, excuse me, the path may look very unique and very different for each of us, but at the end of the day, the intentionality behind putting in work, it's going to yield fruit. But it also, when people talk about, oh, just Jesus take the wheel, and I'm like, wow, I love that. That's great, but like you got to push the gas pedal. Like you got to do something, right? Like you got to get the car in motion. You got to do something and give Jesus something to steer. And just looking at your bio and your background, it seems like you definitely have given Jesus a steering wheel, but man, your foot's on the gas pedal too.
Yeah, there's a number of things in what you were saying there. I'll start off with the work aspect of it. I think, from every different corner of the self-help world, they are preaching, less effort required and greater results. I don't think that that's the case. However, I don't know that for me, it's less about the work that I put into it. It's, for instance, I played football my whole life. And I kind of got burnt out on going to the gym. For me, I can gain 5 pounds here, lose 5 pounds there, and it doesn't really make much of a difference. I mean, I stay pretty much in shape, so I'm not working out for aesthetics. But I want to be active. I want to enjoy life. I want to be able to play, and I want to surf. If I want to surf, I want to, play pickleball or tennis or basketball with friends. And so I kind of follow my interests in that regard. Um, my and even to myself sometimes I can be critical of myself, like, man, I don't work out enough. I should be working out more. And um, friends of mine who see me eat whatever I want and stay looking pretty fit are like, you never work out. But when I sit down and think about it, I am active all the time. I surf 3 or 4 times a week. Um, I walk on the beach a lot. I'm outside a lot. I love going on trails. Now, within that, there is some work, some effort required. There are days when I don't want to surf, when the water's cold and um, and it's cold out. It's nasty weather outside. It might be raining, and I got to put on a wetsuit, and I got to drive 15 minutes, and I got to park far away from the ocean and walk 20 minutes to the beach, and I'm struggling to get out past the break, and I'm tired. And then there is work that has to be put into having fun. But I think it's less like putting on, like whipping yourself into doing things um, that you should do. I think if you pursue the things that you kind of want to do and listen to maybe the design that God has given us as men, then you're pulled instead of pushed. If that makes sense.
Dude, that's so good. I I have lots of thoughts and ideas and questions behind that, but I want to first kind of, can we just go back a little bit and get a little bit of who Nate is and your story and kind of what has all led up to where you are now?
Yeah.
And Nate, don't feel bad. Stu is a very much of a fair weather like snowboarder. I mean, he's got like I have to take like blankies and warmy socks up
Hand
just to get him
warmers.
on the mountain occasionally, so
That's
don't feel
right.
bad about that. But anyways, go ahead.
Okay. Well, and this is the other point that you brought up, David, which is that the path isn't straightforward. Um, so when I got out of the Air Force in 2011, I was 27, um, may have just turned 28, and I was fired up and ready to change the world, right? And all I'd heard, for the previous 9 years in the military, like going to the Air Force Academy and um, just being an officer, you hear, oh, you guys are the best of the best of the best. And you can think, in the military that it's going to be easy when I get out in the civilian world. It's going to be shooting fish in the barrel, and I'm going to start this business and just crush it. And the reality was anything but that. If anything, I feel like the military is kind of like school. It's a very controlled environment. Um, there are disappointments. You can get assigned a base that you didn't want or whatever, but for the most part, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z to get this result. In order to get this command, I need to do this, this, and that. In the real world, it doesn't work that way. And so, I thought with my first business idea, because I was a business major at the Air Force Academy, And my advisor there was an entrepreneur at heart, and he was the one that gave me the entrepreneurship bug, if you will. And I've always wanted, since the academy, to start my own business. And I think I love the competition. I love the challenge of taking an idea and building it into something that's real. And so my first business idea, coming out of the military, was to build this language learning website that I was confident was going to be $1 billion business and beat out Rosetta Stone. And actually, I was building it while I was in Afghanistan, and the guys that I paid to build the website, I basically paid 40 grand, and they ran off with the money, declared bankruptcy, and I had nothing to show for it. And that was that was most of my savings. I had about another 30% that I managed to live on the next like 7 or 8 months when I got out of the Air Force. And I used that to try and find a tech co-founder, and did everything I could to get this thing off the ground. But, so here it comes into this path, maybe David, what you were talking about, of following the God's path, which is the unknown. And for me, here's what it looked like when I got out of the Air Force. I can remember having a conversation with my dad, and my dad was the principal. He started a Christian private school in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where I went K through 12. And he told me when I was already out, and I was looking to move back to France to start this language learning website. He's like, man, I don't know why you want to go back to France and start this language learning website. He's like, you're a teacher, Nate. I want you to come back and teach at ACA. And I can remember thinking, that's the last thing I'll ever do, is move back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and teach a senior Bible class at the school where my dad's the principal and where I went K through 12. Like, my dad thinks so small. I didn't tell him that, but I was thinking it. I was like, I want to change the world. And so I didn't. I went back to France, and it was different than I thought it was, than I thought it would be. I continued to make just blunder after blunder and lose money. I look at that period as kind of my real world MBA. But ultimately it was providential. I ended up that year coming back to Tuscaloosa and was staying with my parents for a month. I was trying to figure out what to do. I was like next to nothing in savings, and I was applying for jobs, but no doors were opening. I'd been told that, I went to this prestigious grad school in Paris, France, after the academy, and was told you're not going to have an issue finding a good job. Well, no doors were opening, and around that, and I was confused. I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. And but there was still this like kind of offer on the table of teaching. And I heard this message that in that period while I was home, there was a teacher who taught at a Christian school in Birmingham for 20 years, who was doing this conference one weekend, and I went and listened to him, and I talked to him after it because I thought the conference was great. And he said, I've got this series on purpose. And he sent me the link to it, and he's like, I think you should go listen to it. So I listened to it, and it knocked me to my knees. It was a life-changing, life-altering redirection for me. The essence of that talk series was that fulfillment in life comes from following design rather than following desire. That if God created us with certain gifts and abilities, he knows what's going to make us the happiest. And it's contrary to everything that we hear growing up in the US, which is follow your heart. And the reason for that is, what's in our heart is what we see in popular culture. Following your heart for me as a guy growing up in Alabama was to play football at Alabama and then play in the NFL. And I'll get into this later. I do think there is some truth in following your heart, but it's very hard and very nuanced to be able to know what's truly from God within our heart. So that said, that was 2012 and probably June of 2012. And, my dad asked me again, and I said yes. And so I went to teach at my old high school. I taught a senior comparative religion, senior Bible class. And within the first month of the job, I felt so alive. It was the most fulfilling thing I'd ever done up to that point. And I stayed for 3 years, and those 3 years were foundational in setting the direction of the rest of my life. Within that period, my dad had an experience at an Orthodox church in Chicago, Illinois, and walked out, think my dad's, grew up Southern Baptist. So this was a kind of a strange thing for him. And did all the research and heard about all the Campus Crusade leaders in the 70s who en masse saw that, they were Campus Crusade and affected a lot of change, but a lot of it was kind of skin deep. And they were asked the question of, okay, well, Jesus said that he's going to change the world through the church. So what is the church and where is the church? And a lot of them joined the Orthodox Church. So I had that going on. At the same time, a childhood best friend who was my roommate in Tuscaloosa became Roman Catholic. And that was another wrench in the tire of, from being in the military, I had friends from every Christian walk, from every stripe, every denomination. But I think in the back of my mind, I always thought, well, I know Jesus better than they do, or I love Jesus more than they do. But when my friend became Catholic, it hit different. It felt like an inference that I was missing out on something because he was just like me. And so in this period, it got me reading about the early church and really learning about church history. And one of the things that came up through my friend becoming Catholic was I heard about this guy named Peter Kreeft, who's a Catholic philosopher, just a very winsome old man, very well spoken, super intelligent. And one of the things he talked about a lot is the ecumenical movement, which I had never heard about, which is based on John 17:21, Jesus's longest prayer. And he says, Father, I pray for those who come to believe in me through the disciples, that they may be one as you and I are one. Then the world will believe that you sent me. And I understood. I was like, this is how the kingdom of heaven comes to earth. It's not by, waging this culture war and trying to save all these unbelievers. It's by Christians putting into practice the things that Jesus talked about and commanded in John 14 through 17, which is to love each other You know, if there are 41,000 Christian denominations in the world, and, you know, Baptists say that Catholics are going to hell and vice versa, the unbelieving world looks at Christianity as a hoax. And so that became, I understood. I was like, this is why God put me on the earth. This is my mission in life. And so
Dude,
in
I want to
2015,
real quick on that.
yeah.
I think you hit something. And I just want to just hit a couple points in that. So one of the things you said is, which is fascinating, and I grabbed my a devotional that I've been reading. David Green wrote this devotional. He's the founder of Hobby Lobby, and it has been incredible. And yesterday, the devotional was titled the problem with comparisons, but really what he dove into was Galatians 6:4-5, and which culminates in without comparing themselves to someone else, for each one should carry their own load. And he dove into what that means, our own load, and specifically talking about Paul instructing Christians not to compare with anybody else, but instead to encourage them to take pride in their own work and to carry their own load, because God has given each of us an assignment and a calling that is tailor made just for us. That assignment and that calling are not contingent on how much money I make, my net worth. It's really, and even contrary to those things, the thing that you said that I was like, oh, that's really good is you said it's not bad to follow your heart. And the thing that immediately hit me was the problem that's bad about following your own heart is that most of us are following a heart that's not ours. We're following an agenda or something that was put in, whether through comparison or we don't truly know our heart. And what you just said, man, I listened to this. Actually, I was reading through a phenomenal series on unity that Rick Warren did,
Mhm.
and it was fascinating because he was talking about the church and he was talking about Jesus Christ and God. The nature of Jesus is unity, is unifying. And he was talking exactly what you're talking about, this idea of just how when we hear in this political landscape people embracing the political divides from a seat of religion, or at least that's what they're claiming, is so heartbreaking because it's not truly who Jesus is, was, or will be, and nor what he desires. And so I think there's a couple things that you really hit on that are powerful. And I would encourage our listeners really 2 points. One, if you're a believer, then you have to believe who Jesus says he is. And there is so much study. It's a fascinating study if you just dive into unity, like just unity. The amount of the amount of verses and the amount of time spent in the word talking about unity, dude, it changed my whole perspective on a lot of things. I stopped saying that people are going to go to hell. I'm just kidding. I was never one of those. Um, but the other thing that I would highly encourage everybody to just take some time is to, no kidding, dive into what it means. What is your load? And what are your passions and what are your purposes as given to you by God? And even if you're not a believer, what are the things that in your heart that have been put there by somebody else? What are the things in your heart that you're chasing and pursuing that are not truly of you or of God? They're of society, your job, whatever. And you'll never find fulfillment if that's what you're pursuing, because you might achieve it. You might achieve those things that are in your heart. And then you're going to be like, oh, wow, I just wasted my entire life on that endeavor. This sucks. Right. So anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there were a couple of things that you said that really just had just had my brain going and my heart stirring, because it's when you look out to our Christian brothers and sisters, it's not my Catholic brothers and sisters, my Baptist brothers and sisters, my non-denominational, I don't even know what that means. Like my non-denominational, who that includes,
Right.
it's my Christian brothers and sisters. And as a definition, we love Christ. He's our Lord and
Yeah.
Savior, right? So it's just a fascinating. But please continue.
Well,
I completely cited. I don't even know if you remember where you were, but I think it was really important to highlight the foundation that you're talking about has really driven where you've gone from there, which is fascinating.
well, first, like, thank you for interrupting. Like, y'all, please interrupt me because I can kind of ramble on. But so I'll respond to two of your points, David, one, going back to the same guy that that gave that series on purpose. He's had a huge impact in my life, and going deeper into that series, the meat of that series is this idea that a product, for instance, has a design, and human beings, we have an identity, and that we can't understand our purpose until we understand our design. And so really the three talks were identity, mission, and then purpose. And so when you understand our identity as a human being, and then you understand God's mission in the world, only then can you know your purpose. And so, and this is the future of Jesus Academy, which we'll get to later. But his take is that, I mean, the Bible is not the Quran. You know, it's not a set of rules and laws. It's a story. It's a history of the world. And when you read through the Bible cover to cover, you get the grasp of this story, and you understand that, you know, regardless of whether you think the universe is 6,000 years old or almost 14 billion years old, the believers, the disciples of Christ 2,000 years ago believed that we're there. We're at the end. We're the credits are about to roll. You know, the story is basically done. When you understand where God is going, then you ask the question, what gifts do I have? And how can I play in this story that's already been written? You know, there's a quote that he uses that says, most people today look like a cast of characters who are looking for a play. You know, they're trying to come up with their own play rather than saying, okay, I'm dressed like this, you know, what's the real? They're trying to create their own play instead of like fitting into the play that they should be playing. I'm probably butchering the quote, but I think you get the point that purpose, you know, we can't create our purpose. A boat doesn't decide its own purpose. It had a design, it had a creator, and it's a boat. You know, my granddad would always say, you know, a cat is most happy when it's doing catty things. A pig is most happy when it's wallowing in the mud. Human beings are most happy when we're doing what we were created to do, which is be in communion with God and other people. So that's one kind of area we could continue to go down. I think the other, to your point,
But, you know, I think, and sorry, those are two things that when you look at today's society are suffering most. And I think the devil like sits back and is like, yes, is the idea of isolation, especially in our Western culture, isolation, and then leaving the church in droves. Two things that you just identified are the things that make us most happy, are the two things that have been identified as significant movements, and also one being an I mean, the government called it an epidemic of loneliness, right?
totally.
Like this is the real things. These are not David and Stu and Nate just you know, pontificating. This is the government of this country has highlighted these stats, and it's fascinating.
Totally. Yeah. You know, and the other thing I was going to say, you know, going back to the ecumenical movement, I think what the last, you know, I thought I had this mission, you know, to kind of bring the church together. What I learned along the way was that I needed to change, that I didn't know God as well as I thought I did. You know, we hear St. Paul saying, consider others as better than yourself. And I don't think we like really understand what that means. I mean, it truly means like flip it. When I was an immature Christian, which is most of my life, and maybe I'm still
I'm
immature
still
Christian. I
going.
don't know.
Yeah.
But this idea that I believed that I knew Christ better than other people. Now it's the opposite. I assume other people are following Christ more than I am, and they know Christ better than I do. And it's changed the way I see life. Now it's like, teach me. I I need to learn. I need some help here. And I think that's the essence of what it means to be a Christian is like, if your cup is full, you have nothing left to learn and you have no growth. There will be no growth. And so this is what the ecumenical movement should be about is 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 how do we learn from each other? It's not like, okay, you can remain over there. You know, the church is the body of Christ. We're the bride of Christ. And um, Peter Lightheart says that it's easy to love your wife if she lives in a different house. That's easy. You live separately. So, okay, yeah, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we'll meet in the middle occasionally. That's not a marriage. Um, and the reality is, I think it first comes from humility to say, okay, I've got to learn, teach me something. And, you know, two, I think seeking that out, I think for me, it's like the most growth I've gotten as a Christian has been from learning about traditions, um, separate other than my own. And I've changed. Like, maybe we'll get into this later, but I've become Catholic here in Brazil. Um, and I don't believe in Catholics will probably be shocked to hear this. That it's like, because I've visited every branch of Christianity. I've learned from every branch. I've gone to, all the Orthodox services and around the world of, and there's this sense of like, welcome home. Now you're home. You're a Catholic. You've made it. And it's like, no, we've never made it until we die. Um, and there will be no denominations in heaven. Um, so that's kind of my stick on ecumenism. But that was so I moved to Nashville to do that. And maybe to get back on kind of my journey to where I'm at today. I moved to Nashville to start this. I didn't know what it was, to try and figure out what this movement would be. At first I was calling it Ut Unum, which was I pulled from John Paul II's encyclical Ut Unum Sint, which means that they may be one. Um, and I didn't know what it looked like. I thought, in grad school in France, my best friends were a Muslim from Morocco, a Mormon from Utah, and a Greek Orthodox, basically European agnostic. Um, and it was great. And I, at the time, was non-denominational Christian. It's like we were just curious. It's like, oh, what? You believe this? Um, and we were able to learn from each other. And this is part of the what I taught in comparative religion to the seniors in Alabama was simply like, what I went through when I was in high school. It was like we had a football coach who was our teacher, and Bible class was kind of the boring class. It's like, all right, you read this chapter and you read that chapter. And I kind of was like, I put that all aside and I said, let's learn. Um, I think Os Guinness says that comparison is the mother of clarity. And so when you lay out all the worldviews, there's not an infinite number of worldviews. Like David, you talked about this earlier, that we can study and come to a good guess at what the truth is. That remaining 5-10% requires faith, but for everyone, whether you're an atheist, agnostic, whatever else. No, we don't know for sure this side of eternity with complete certainty. But there's a guy, J. Warner Wallace, says that faith is not, when we talk about faith as Christians, we're not talking about blind faith. We're not going to strong faith does not mean that you believe in something that you know to be false. I think that's what non-Christians think about Christians. It's like, they know this is all a hoax, but they really believe it. And they have strong faith. It's like, no.
Dude, I think some of the most faithful people are atheists. I think those are some of the most faithful people because they have a world belief. They believe in something. It's just not God, but they
Right.
believe things lined up and happen a certain way. And I'm like, dude, you guys, your faith requires more faith than my faith does, to be quite
Well,
honest. To believe
they're
what you believe
optimistic.
requires more faith, right?
I would say they're optimistic. They're not like true faith. This is what J. Warner Wallace says, is the best inference of the evidence. So we should be, as Peter and Paul both push us to do in the epistles, it's like, have a good defense of your faith. You guys don't just believe what I say. Go and study this for yourselves. And when you put everything on paper and you're trying to make sense of the pieces of the puzzle, what makes the most sense of this life? And the best inference of that evidence is that's faith. That's okay, I've studied this, and this logically, from every angle, makes the most sense. And I will align myself with truth, which is a hard path to take, and not everyone can do it.
So that journey then led you to starting Jesus Academy. Is that kind of what you wanted to kind of take all this study and ideas and compilation and questions and put it into something that you thought would more, I guess, successfully unify
Well, so,
the
I
belief?
think, yeah. So I moved to Nashville in 2015, fired up to that I was going to change the world again. And I get there, and my first idea was, I kind of ripped from the Mormon. The Mormons are brilliant marketers. In the early 20th century, they were the most um in people group on the fringe of American society, and somehow they've pulled themselves into mainstream culture to where we had a presidential candidate who's Mormon, and most people don't think it's super weird anymore. And that, I think a lot of that came from the things like I'm a Mormon campaign, where they'll video the lead singer of The Killer, Brandon Flowers, and it's he's playing with his kids, and then kissing his wife. He's like, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a musician, I'm a Mormon. And people see that and they're like, Brandon Flowers is a Mormon? I guess that's not that weird. And so that was my initial idea, because if we just sit around and debate theology, we're going to go nowhere. And there's an Orthodox metropolitan who's now passed away, who I really respected and learned a lot from, Callistos Ware, who says, we can't love each other until we know each other. or we can't love each other unless we like each other, and we can't like each other unless we know each other. And so my first like take at this at Unum back then was, I want to film. I want to film different services, because no Catholics are going to go to a Baptist church service, and no Baptists are going to go to a Catholic service, or to an Orthodox or to a Maronite Christian service. And so I filmed like 6 different church services in Alabama. I filmed a Black revival in Utah, Alabama. I filmed an Orthodox Pascha Easter service. I filmed a Catholic Mass, an Episcopal service. And then I ran out of money. I was paying for all this out of my own pocket. And I think this is maybe an important like piece that will help your listeners. At trying to like find this union between my mission in the world and day-to-day reality, which is, I left Alabama again at 31 years old. I moved to Nashville. I knew what my purpose in life was. And I get to Nashville, and I had, not much money in the bank. My brother was my biggest supporter. It was a nonprofit then. And he gave me $10,000, and I drove Uber and Lyft for a couple months when I moved to Nashville, and I was trying to get this thing going, and it just went nowhere. And by December of 2015, my parents were freaking out. My brothers they're like, why don't you go get a job? And I believed, I was like, this is my calling. And I remember praying. I was like, God, all right, I've got a month of runway left. I believe this is what you want me to do. If I don't get something in the door money wise soon, I'm under a bridge. And so here's how nothing is ever lost when you're on the path, when you're like truly like, all right, God, I want to know, help me. He uses everything. So get this, I prayed that prayer. Literally 2 weeks after that, I got an email from a company in South Korea who had a business, a language learning business with the same name as the language learning company that I was starting, but I had the URL, benative.com. And they offered to buy it from me for $9,000. Literally in 2 weeks, like after praying that prayer. So that like floated me for another 6 months. And I kind of like just needed a break from Unum at that point. And a friend and I started with this other friend of ours that we met, a cracker company, which I went through the initial Bunker Labs cohort in Nashville with this cracker company idea. And it ended up being a horrible like partnership. We didn't work well together. And like, again, by like June of 2016, I've got like 3 weeks of savings left in the bank. And again, like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, I can't even think about what's going to happen here, or I'm going to lose my mind. And again, God came through. And this is where like it gets real, that it's not about, Christianity is not about believing. Like it's not about a mental assertion that Jesus is the like king of the world. Demons believe that and shudder. What Christianity is a trust in God the Father on the basis of Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit. And you know what? Like when you take this path of following him, it's a rocky road, and it will require a growth in trust. And, um, and that year I learned, you know, that was what, 32, 33. That was the most like I'd been put on the line at that point of like, is God do I really believe that he's going to provide for me? Um, do I have the courage to follow what he's planted in my heart, knowing that he's going to provide along the way? You know, otherwise the alternative is what a lot of men do, a lot of men and women, which is, you know what, I'm gonna do what's safe, what's secure, what even a lot of like Christian like counsel will tell you. You know what, you need to do this safe. You need to get this degree so that you have this kind of security. You know what, this is at the core of my mission. Is like, if we as men had the courage to follow and trust, um, like it, and we're not going to know. Like sometimes it's so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. But if like this is what's like what we're called to is like Abraham. You know, that's what he's like. I don't know where I'm going, but you call, and this is the definition of faith that God gives for why God approved of Abraham in Hebrews 11. It's Abraham went where he didn't know where he was going, but he obeyed. And I think if we obey this calling, this like, I want to do this, and yeah, I'm scared, but my trust that God is going to provide for me outweighs this fear. Um, so
Would you say in I think you said in the peace plan at the beginning you said your dad always said God is a risk taker and you can't steer the truck if you don't push the pedal or something like that.
you can't steer a parked car.
Can't steer a parked car. That's what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Well,
love that, man. Yeah, God
so
took a big risk on us humans.
huge risk, but you know what? It was worth it.
Yeah.
And so this was like when I left that cracker company. Through that, you know, I was making these crackers, and I had started going to an Anglican church in Nashville. A priest asked me, he's like, "Can you sell those to us as communion wafers?" Um, and I was like, "That's interesting." He's like, "Man, if you could solve the communion wafer problem, I'd love you forever." I'm like, "What's the communion wafer problem?" He's like, "Look, nobody likes the taste of these cardboard wafers, but
That's awesome.
he's like, but they're so cheap and convenient. No priest is ever going away from them." He's like, "We all love real bread, but real bread crumbles. And that's a problem if you're having to vacuum up the body of Christ on the floor." And I was like, this is interesting. So I dove into that, and there's one company that controls 80% of all the communion bread in the US, England, Australia, and Canada. Um,
That's crazy.
and the crazy thing, and this was another rabbit hole for me. Um, I spent 3 years going down this rabbit hole of like, what? Like, what is the Eucharist? So when at the same time, I had become Anglican on this move. Somebody invited me to an Anglican church, and I went and loved it. And I loved receiving communion every week. I loved following the church calendar. And so this is where like ut unum, I realized it's not a disunity problem. Disunity is a symptom of the true problem, which is immaturity. Like, we lack discipleship. And what maturity looks like is discipleship. And these sacraments, these things that have been in the church for 2,000 years, which we've lost in the Protestant church. You know, I was like, I've been a Christian my whole life, and I never knew about um, Advent or Epiphany or the 40 days of Lent and the 50 days of Easter. to me, Easter was just a like 3-day like weekend. But when I understood these concepts, I was like, this is a tool that the Holy Spirit has given the church to disciple Christians. And so Unum became, you know what, this is what it really is a school of prayer and how to use these tools to grow as a Christian. And so I started developing my own liturgical planner, which was the original version of the Peace Planner. And at the same time, I started developing a gratitude journal, which is the original version of the Joy Journal. And like they both kind of coincide, they complement each other in that, we need to schedule time if we're gonna like pray. Like prayer is, we think that love is like spontaneous, mostly as Protestants, but love is scheduled. And God understood this when he like trained the Israelites. He's like, look, there's 7 prayer times throughout the day. And you guys are going to have morning sacrifice and evening sacrifice. And you're going to pray these other prayer times throughout the day. And man, when you go through the epistles and like look at it through that lens, you look at Acts and you see, oh, you know, the times when Jesus appears to the disciples, when Peter had the dream and he was praying on the roof of the house in Acts, he was praying at the noon prayer. He was praying at the 6th hour. When I think it was when James, I might mess this up. I know Paul and somebody else went to the temple at 3 p.m. These hours are really important. So I've been trying to kind of get to the point here. I've been trying to like incorporate these prayer hours, these scheduled prayer hours that God has given the church as a means to help men become more organized. Because the reality is, we're following everybody but Jesus today. When it comes to scheduling our day, we're much more likely to follow Tim Ferriss's like, um, you know, or
5 hour work
pick,
week, 4 hour work
yeah,
week.
pick whatever guru online
Yeah.
about like how to organize your day and your morning routine and your evening routine, when what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, comes what it means to be human is prayer. And like if we're not praying, we're not being human. And this, like, to like tie the bow, like um this is what it means to be human. And this is, I think, why most people are on a desperate search for happiness that leads nowhere. And like, this is why it's my mission. It's like, it's why it's my personal mission for myself. I want
Yeah.
to be happy. I want to be saved. I want to know God. And like, I'm not there yet. I don't pray the 7 hours, the 7 prayer periods throughout the day, but I'm building these tools for myself because I want to.
Do that. So I started using the use. I think it was Stephen Bump, our mutual friend Stephen Bump. He had kind of sent us out like, hey, check my buddy Nate's journals out. He's trying to get him out in some people's hands, and that was a year ago. And I basically they sat on my desk for a year. I did another devotional last year, and then I picked them up at the beginning of this year, and I started going through the Peace Planner, started reading through the Joy Journal, and I started putting it into action. I started doing the vision and stuff like that. I tell you what, man, just this first, month and a half of I have it right here using the Joy Journal,
Mm.
writing in it every single morning, using the Peace Planner, writing out vision. It's been incredibly impactful. And I'm not praying 6, 7 times a day. Nowhere close to it.
Right.
But I'm getting better.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say, like, I'm wrestling too, man. There's a lot of like mission purpose stuff that's like going in my brain right now. Um, but having this space every single morning and following a routine and being like incredibly intentional about it has been a game changer for me. Just
Mhm.
this month and a half.
Totally.
It's been awesome, man. And so, I know that you've kind of put a pause on it, but whenever you hit play again, like let's go. Because it's been impactful for me. And I know that it would be impactful for a lot of other people. And I want to fast forward a little bit because time's sake, we want to honor your time, but you put a pause on Jesus Academy, you put a pause on these journals, but you haven't put a pause on continuing the journey and the discovery. And now you're kind of focused on something else. And just kind of quickly, what's that, and I guess
Mm.
why, and how are you continuing to impact
Yeah.
those in this journey?
Well, one, thank you for the words. I mean, for me, all that I poured into it is worth it just to hear you say that. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's good, man.
two, the so the origin of the Peace Planner and the Joy Journal, it came when when I was in Nashville 17, 18, making small run prints of like the liturgical planner back then and the Joy Journal. Um, they that was, I was selling 200, 300 a year. And there was another guy in Bunker Labs who had built a similar concept, similar company. He had christianplanner.com, and he was selling a lot of books, but he just had that one product. And was coming at it from this theological angle. And so I had a lot of ideas, and he was like, man, I'd love, for you to help us like build some undated journals, because his were dated. And that means like, come March of every year, it's like that inventory kind of dies. So I built, and this was at the start of COVID too. I was like kind of full pedal on the gas. Um, I built like 3 or 4 new products and refreshed an old product, and um, and we were still trying to like go, and I burned out, and like everybody did, I think during COVID, but it was good for me because I like through journaling. So I went to counseling first, like trying to like dig into why do I keep burning out, and that like um and then through journaling I was like dug in deeper into those questions. And what I learned in journaling, and this is why like they had to be um physical tools, physical products, is we as men, we like technology. It feels way more efficient. The reality is I don't think that we can truly pray with technology. There's all kinds of prayer apps, and they can be helpful here and there, but prayer is undistracted time. It's solitude. You can't get solitude through technology. There's at least 5%, at least, running in the back of your mind of, I need to check that email, or I need to send this. Like with a book, you can truly be alone with God. And that is the essence of prayer. And so like, and what happens, man, when you like pour yourself out to God and yourself in a book, and you're truly honest with yourself, this is what comes out. I realized, I was like, I was 36 at the time. This is 2020. I was still at Christian Planner. And I realized, you know what? Like I keep burning out because I'm not living the Christian narrative. I'm living the American narrative, which says that um, I need to suffer, that life is suffering until you're 55, at least until you're financially independent and you can retire. then you can enjoy life. But until that, you gotta grind, hustle. We will Jocko Willink ourselves to death. We'll slap ourselves in the face to be more efficient and wring every second out of every day. And that, the core of that is insecurity and fear that we're not enough, and fear that we're not going to make it. But you know what trust looks like? Trust looks like playing. It looks like having fun. And I realized I hadn't done that. I didn't have the courage to have fun. I didn't have the courage to take a vacation, because every vacation I took the previous 10 years, I thought, I'm getting behind. I'm falling behind. I need to work. And so in 2021, I went to Brazil. I said, all right, God, I'm going to learn how to trust you. I don't have the money in the bank. People would tell me, oh, it's easier for you, Nate. You're single. You can just pick up and move. And granted, yeah, it's easier than when you have a family, but it's not easy. I had a mortgage in Nashville. I had a car payment. I had 3 months of runway. Again, I'm like on the brink of like nothing in the bank account. And I said, all right, this is like, I came to Brazil the first week. I made more friends than I had in like 7 months. I was outside surfing. I felt more alive than I had in 10 years or longer. And I was like, okay, this is a data point. This is a good data point. God is in this. And I said, all right, God, I've got 3 goals. I'm not setting any professional goals this year. I'm going to learn how to surf, one. I'm going to learn how to be in a relationship. And I'm going to learn Portuguese, because I love learning new languages and new cultures. And I did all 3 of those. And that was the most growth I had experienced in my life. And I came out of those 4 months completely recharged, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, everything. And that was the origin of the Peace Planner and the Joy Journal. I'd like mapped it all out in a month, and like wrote the intros to both of those books in the next like 2 or 3 months. I had sold my house to kind of earn to live on. And so I took basically 120K, let's say, from selling my house, the profits of it. And I put about 70K into designing the books, printing 1,000 of each, building the website. I produced 35 plus videos, all in a year and a half. And by January of 2022, I launched Jesus Academy, the website, and basically crickets. I was like, again, God, what is going on? Like, this has
Here we
been,
go again.
here we go again, like I was journaling again, and just frustrated at God, and like burnout again. And I was like, God, I don't get it. Like, I feel like I'm like, you're not helping me do what you've called me to do. And I felt him like kind of nudge and say, well, look at the goals in the Peace Planner that you made, that you set for yourself for this year. And it was sell 12,000 books, 6,000 Peace Planners, 6,000 Joy Journals. I hadn't even like sold, 500 of each. And this is by like February, March timeframe. It was for like 500,000 in revenue. Get 50,000 YouTube subscribers in 1 year. All of these things with a team of 1 and no marketing budget. And it hit me in the moment. I was like, this is my pattern. This is what I've done the last 10 years is I find an idea that I think is going to change the world. I'll spend 2 to 3 years researching it, building a brand around it. And when I launch it and it's not successful in the first 3 months, I get discouraged and I quit and I move on to the next idea. And I was like, God, okay. One, sorry, I keep doing this. Two, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to quit Jesus Academy. This is my mission, and I'll do whatever it takes to be in this for the long run. And I was like, I need a job. And in a week from saying that, again, an old professor of mine from the Air Force Academy reached out, and he had just joined the software company as the COO, and he's like, dude, we've got a sales position. I'd love to have you. And so, I had prayed for God to help me sell the books, and he didn't help me sell the books, but he gave me a sales job. And so again, like, this is a rocky road. I think the path of following God is always rocky, dark, filled with unknowns, and hard, mentally tough. And so I hated sales. This was a big company, successful company, but they had zero online content. And from building all the videos for Jesus Academy, I knew how to make content. So I pitched them. I was like, let me make some marketing videos for you guys. And they was like, yeah, do it. So I did that for about 5 months. And then I think they were like, look, we need money in the door now. Like, we need you back on the sales side. And I was just like, I don't want to go back to the sales side. I was like, I love this, kind of feel called to this. And I started to see this is the beginning of kind of this thought leadership trend, I think, in the marketing space. And so I left that company in May of 23. All right. Yeah. Year and a half so ago. And I started CEO Amplifier, which was, I started with my brother. He had run his own energy consulting company for 19 years and was growing 30% year over year. And so he was like, I don't know that we need this. It's like, we've never had a marketing department yet. The people that need us seem to find us. I was like, dude, you kind of own this $10 million market over here. There's a whole $100 million market that your product serves, but you're not touching. And your clients aren't going to find out about it. Those people aren't going to find out about it unless you talk about it. So anyway, he agreed, and I got him posting twice a week on LinkedIn. And within the first 6 months of that, he got 3 offers on his company. And so they closed this last April of 24. And it was bought by a private equity company who bought another company in his and merged them together. And they kept me on until now. And I guess I'll save the rest for the 3 to 4 minute kind of punchy point. But that's how I ended up in CEO Amplifier.
It's good, man. Just for the audience, for the listeners, what specifically is CEO Amplifier? We'll put the link in the show notes, but give us kind of the mission.
Yeah. So the standard, like the operating thesis is that people buy from people. We don't buy from companies. So, Elon Musk can send out, one post on X, one tweet, and it can hit, 150 million people. Whereas, X can post and it might hit 30 million people. And it goes the same, it works the same in the niches as it does in popular culture. So, Richard Branson, like, people connect with Richard Branson. They don't connect really with a company virgin. And, most CEOs aren't posting on LinkedIn. And so what I provide is content strategy for CEOs, or executives, and content creation. So I'll interview them for, I'll spend 30 minutes a week with them, less than 2 hours a month. And from those interviews, I'll pull out enough content to post 2 to 3 times a week for throughout the month. And what they get from that, is not only do they attract clients, which is most of their goals, but they also attract talent. They attract like all-star talent. They attract investors. They attract acquirers, in the case of my brother. They attract press, partners. Everyone is on LinkedIn. And to be honest, right now, it's a golden opportunity because there's really not much competition on LinkedIn. The quality of content on Instagram and other platforms, not only content, but also the quality of production is so much higher. And, people still have this idea of posts on LinkedIn as being cringy. And that doesn't mean you should avoid it. It means if you just post authentic, valuable content, you're gonna skyrocket. You're gonna quickly find a growing audience that you can leverage into sales and everything else that's good for your company.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've LinkedIn is the only place that I go for. I don't have any of the other socials. I've been seeing just a change in the way, just the way that even with like the shorts and like just different things that are being emphasized. And man, I love that you're building a business around it, but also, upping the game of the content on what I believe to be a very valuable platform. And to really, with the intent of adding value on that space as well. And quite frankly, as you were talking about it, I'm thinking about it, our mission, Stu and I, and the type of people we reach out to, and in our heart's desire for TKM, for the Kinetic Man, is really to bring men into community, out of isolation, out of loneliness. And when you think about somewhere like LinkedIn, man, all these business centric individuals, I think it's a perfect place to be effective and genuine, and to be, to add value in a way that's perceived differently. Excuse me. And I think that's you just have my brain going, because at the end of the day, for me and for Stu and I, or for Stu and me, it's very much, we changed TKM to be, someone, we framed the question, hey, what do we want this to be? And at the end of the day, we came up with basically 2 sentences: to build communities of men, and to glorify God. And really, if that's your heart, what a rich place also to really pour in. And so that's awesome, man. I think when we hit stop recording, is there a stop recording button, Stu, or is it you just stop recording? When we hit the stop record button, I think we're gonna have a couple conversations. Yeah, it says stop. It's the stop record button. There's the record button, and then there's the stop record button. Yeah, I'm just highlighting to you, Nate, how profoundly proficient I am with technology, and really just cutting edge. That's what we do here. So, yeah. Dude, this was fascinating, man. I really I appreciate your vulnerability. The conversation went a direction that I did not anticipate it going. I mean, we always talk about Jesus, so that's a favorite topic, but just seeing, how you wove, how Jesus has knit together this entire adventure for you, and provided when you need to provide, and challenging you in a way. I heard it said the other day, and this is just encouragement to you. I was talking to a guy. We were having just a one-on-one conversation, and he said, it's fascinating. I always hear from God. I see, and it really bolsters my faith. And he said, my wife she always is hitting these roadblocks, and she's hitting these challenges, kind of like what you're describing, just this again, this again. And he said, I had never heard anybody frame it this way. He's like, I actually think my wife's journey is more beautiful because God God doesn't have to like hold her hand and show her miracles as he shows me. Her faith is so strong that she continues despite not seeing the miracles that I necessarily see or not seeing the hand of God the way I see it.
Mm.
And her faith has been refined so much because of that. And he's like, I think I'm the unlucky one because God realizes like I'm so elementary that he's got to show me, to keep me on the path. It was just a
Right.
fascinating thing. And it made me think, as you were talking, made me think of that conversation I had with that guy. Cause man, it would be very easy for you to have a completely different approach or a completely different view of God in light of the experiences that you highlighted. So thank you for that, man. Thank you for your vulnerability and just sharing that story with us. It's what a blessing.
For sure. No, I mean, you guys are doing it, man. You're having a podcast, like, good on you guys. Like, I tell a lot of my clients, it's like, that's one of the best things that you can do. I think a video podcast is probably the number one most effective medium out there that's available to us. And I see you guys posting on LinkedIn. So it's like, good. You've got the strategy.
Well, our businesses are so amazing that we basically start a business and then we go from having fees to it being free. And so that's kind of that's the trajectory of our businesses. We start with a great idea and we make it free to try to bring as many men as possible.
Yeah.
It's
But
really good for the bottom line.
Thank you guys for bringing me on. This was fun, getting to know you guys a little better and spending some time chatting about
Yeah.
God, which is like, I miss these. I don't have enough of these conversations. One, because I'm like, don't speak Portuguese fluently down here in Brazil, but it's been a treat today.
Yeah, man. This has been a lot of
Well,
fun.
we'll
Well,
invite you to our Connect
come
Man
join
calls that
Connect Man
happen
calls.
every Tuesday, and we have some pretty deep conversations in there. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nate, what do we put in the show notes? How do we get guys more information on CEO Amplifier and everything that you're doing?
So my website's a little out of date. The best way is just to connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message on there.
Perfect.
Yeah, the website is mostly it's oriented around video, which was my initial kind of concept. I still do a good bit of video, but I think there's an important initial stage of just learning how to post any kind of content
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. So I've reframed the packaging of my offerings a little, but reach out on LinkedIn and we can have a combo.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we'll put your link in the show notes. And like David said, man, this is a fun conversation. Again, love just hearing the journey and your vulnerability and honesty. And if you keep on following him, he's gonna lead you the right direction. So keep on going, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. Guys and gals, reach out to Nate. We'll put his LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Check out CEO Amplifier. And then when he does put play on the journals again, we'll get those going and getting those sales up. Nate, thanks, brother. See ya.
see you.